What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of BYP. Back your play with Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones, our guy, our NFL guru, the host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, and of course, Broad Street South. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on this Football Friday from our wonderful friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clementsford Road. Check them out in Deptford, New Jersey. We'll get into those guys and some of the great merchandising specials they're doing, which are right around the corner, which the holidays are fast approaching, which, to believe it or not, it's not really the most wonderful time of the year if you are part of that Chargers organization. I was, in full disclosure, got off the air last night with Angel Martinez and company on Tony Bruno Sports Network. I had no desire to watch the game. I wanted to finish out Ballers, so I've been watching that, like banging out, prepping, doing some typing, and I saw 14-0. And then I refreshed about 20 minutes later, and I kid you not, I saw like 42-0. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And then I think around that time you were texting me, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, how do you put that type of effort on the field last night if you're the Chargers, who got absolutely smoked, giving up 63 against the Raiders in what's turned out to be the second most lopsided loss of the season, if we look at what Miami was able to do to Denver early on in the season. So you watched that game last night, Raiders 63, Chargers 21. What the hell's going on there with the Chargers?
And the good thing from this game, Q, is Dean Spano is the owner of the LA Chargers. He was in the house and he was able to watch this and see this debauchery. It was, and Brandon Staley, we've talked over and over about him and his job security or lack thereof. And this just spelled it out. This team is not prepared. Easton Stick, who they had play for Herbert, good young quarterback, but he's always going to be a third string type of quarterback, not ready to pull the string as the main guy coming out there. And the Raiders just took full advantage of it. They Crosby and the guys were all over him defensively. And then offensively, you thought Antonio Pierce would say, okay, let's take the foot off the gas. We're up 42-0 at halftime. He said, you know what? We need to get better too. And they just piled it on. They were throwing the ball over and over to Devontae Adams. There was even a touchdown where they're up big and they run a receiver pass from Myers throwing it to Adams, to put salt in the wounds. But
Right.
I always say, if you can stop them, stop them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys are all pros, and the Raiders needed to win bad, and that's what they did. They piled on the poor Chargers, but I do expect some changes coming soon with the Chargers.
I mean, I think you have to. I was seeing the highlights that Sherman and the gang at NFL Network, or on the Amazon Prime broadcast, saying, "Look, fire the guy," at the half. I mean, that would have been a story for the ages. But I just think you're at the point right now where you got a couple games left. At this point, it's almost like a mercy killing. I hate to say it. Staley's gone. They have to get rid of him. I don't like to throw out the word quit. Those guys flat out quit last night. And again, I didn't watch the game. I went back and I saw the highlights, but by all accounts, what I saw enough of. And it's just one of those situations where you have a Raider squad that, would they get blanked by Minnesota 3-0, then come back the next week and put up 63. So that was a debacle. That was an embarrassing loss. And you're right. If you can just pile on the points, you're going to pile on the points. All right. So we got 3 games on Saturday. Pretty intriguing matchups as we kind of go old school with these Saturday games. Minnesota on the road against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's laying 3. Here's the difference to me. The Vikings, all of a sudden, the Dobbs story was nice. It's kind of subsided. It's cooled off. You've got Mullins getting the start. They've got the other kid back there for the backup, Dobbs, emergency quarterback. I mentioned Cincinnati's laying 3. The total is 40.5. Browning's playing well over his last couple weeks. It almost kind of shows you, by the way, Herbert last night, if you want to have the argument, Herbert or Burrow, look what's going on with Cincinnati. Look what's going on with the Chargers without a legit quarterback. But I think Cincinnati's at least 4.5 to 5 better than the Vikings in this spot. Cincinnati, I believe they're the more desperate team, but they're more on the rise. They're starting to figure things out without Joe Burrow, and that's why I like him at home in this one.
You're right. When I look at Brownie, he stepped in there, did a nice job. He's keeping the football moving on time. getting the ball. Jamar Chase, Mixon is hitting the holes, and that offensive line led by Orlando Brown, their new left tackle, they're playing very well. So, there's a lot of fight left in the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're going to be home in this one. They're in that mix that we had talked about earlier in the week where they're tied with the
Hmm.
Steelers, the Denver Broncos, the Colts are all 7-6. So there's got to be some separation here. And I tend to agree with you when it comes to the Vikings. Nick Mullins is coming in there. It's kind of out of necessity. Dobbs was just turning the football over. Cinderella's slipper did not fit anymore, but we know who Mullins is at this point in his career. And then Madison's not going to play in this game. They're running back. Justin Jefferson has a chest injury. They're not sure if he's going to play. And then defensively, other than Daniel Hunter and Smith in the back end, they really don't have a lot. So I do expect the Bengals to win this one and cover that number.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a war of attrition, and you get teams at the right time to pick them off. Kind of like the next game, Steelers and the Colts. Both teams are banged up. Obviously, the Steelers, who I thought were going to be a playoff team, they're flat out a fraud. They had two back-to-back losses against the Cardinals and the Pats, which was pretty much the low point of the season. Then you look at the Colts, a very slim 1.5 point favorite in that one. Jonathan Taylor, we talked about him in the offseason, wanted to hold out, hold out, hold out. He's been banged up. He's missed a bunch of games over the last two seasons, just under 500 yards. That is a banged up team. And I just think, though, I'm not sold on the Steelers at all. Their offense goes from 421 yards after they fired the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, to 264. They've got quarterback issues. We already know that Trubisky is a turnover machine. To me, this kind of reeks of a Colts blowout win. Like, I just don't see a ton of upside offensively with the Steelers. And maybe I might be wrong. You might see it the other way. I know the Colts are going to have to try to run the football a little bit. I know it's tough without Taylor, but I still like them at home in this one.
This is a coin flip game because both these teams are 7-6, kind of underachievers, more
Yep.
in the Steelers and than the Colts. But when I look at the Steelers, Pickett is not going to play in this game.
Right.
Pickens is kind of underachieved this season. They do have TJ Watt, obviously, in his 14 sacks defensively, and Minka Fitzpatrick. So the Steelers can kind of stop some people in terms of they have players on their defense. But it's all about Gardner Minshew in this one to me.
Yeah.
He kind of he's played well for about 3 weeks, and then last week he threw that stinker out there. You talk about Jonathan Taylor, he has the thumb injury. He's not going to be able to play in this one. Pittman has been playing very well, but I do tend to agree with you that the Steelers are kind of leaking oil at this point. Uh, Very ugly loss that they had to the Patriots. Patriots dominated them up front, a team that only has won 3 games. And I just think that the Colts are going to have just enough with Zach Moss and the rest of those guys and Pittman. Buckner on defense is probably going to make a play. So I think I'll go with the Colts in a close game, but this may be an ugly watch too.
Two teams that have done a little role reversal, right? The Denver Broncos were left for dead a couple weeks ago. Now there's something really off with Detroit. They'll clash 8:15 kickoff. So you have 7-6 Denver, 9-4 Detroit, still in a better position than the Broncos are, but the Lions at home laying 4.5, totals 47.5. But again, if you look at their last couple weeks, even defensively, they've given up 29, 28, 28 points. Green Bay, the Saints, and the Bears. They had the bad loss last week. Goff struggled, I think, just under 175 yards passing. They got to him. They sacked him 4 or 5 times. Denver can get to the quarterback a little bit. Maybe I'm starting to buy in a lot more to this Broncos squad. They've won 6 out of 7. They rebounded from that loss against the Texans. So, they beat up on the Chargers, who obviously have pretty much quit. We saw that last night in their loss to the Raiders. I think there's something, a little juju right now with Denver, and they feel they can kind of slip through the back door here and make the playoffs. I actually like the Broncos on the road outright in this game.
Okay, it's an interesting one because we know Broncos start 1-5. Everybody leaves them for dead. They allow 70 points to the Dolphins. They're the laughing stock.
Yep.
But Sean Payton, he's been a coach in the National Football League a long time. He's right at this team. And Russell Wilson, he's hitting all the right. He's with him. Williams running the football. And then they're getting the ball to receivers like Sutton and the rest of those guys. So their defense is timely with Surtain and them. The defense for the Broncos is going to be the key. Obviously, can they affect Jared Goff? Because we know when bad golf is messing up this team for the Lions, they have some serious problems. Now, this game's at home. Golf has 10 interceptions this
Hmm.
season. We'll see if they're able to have him make a mistake. The key thing, though, is Detroit's defense under Aaron Glenn. We know they have problems stopping people. They're 8-1 when they allow teams to 28 or fewer points, but once they get over 28, they have not done a good job. So back and forth on this one. I'm going to go with the Lions in this one. I think it's going to be a close one. This is a desperation special for them. Obviously, they're going to win the NFC North, but this is a key game for them, and it's at home.
Yeah, stop the bleeding a little bit, get back on track. Again, Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us, Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Hey, by the way, we are brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. If you stop in right now, slightly used sports equipment, baseball, hockey, football, lacrosse, they'll give you the clubs. They got the tees, the cleats, the golf balls, even weights. They will give you cash through January. 30% more in-store credit if you tell them you heard it right here on BYP with Q. Then you got the Sunday slate of games, and there's a couple that I wanted to highlight. And the reason I bring up the Browns at 8-5, they played really well at home, 6-1 mark. The line on this one is Chicago is only laying 3. The total is 38.5. And it's interesting because I'm looking at the Bears, and now these reports coming out that perhaps they're looking to trade Justin Fields. I mean, look, they didn't. This is year 3. They didn't exercise that 5th-year option. That pretty much tells me everything I need to know at this point. I think he's a gifted, physically gifted quarterback, but I don't think he can consistently win as a passer in this league. But be that as it may, a lot of times when you hear those rumblings, now we're going to focus on Fields a lot. But the Browns and their defense and Flacco slinging it, contract extension, go figure, with all these incentives up to almost 4.5. Good for Joe. Good for cool Joe Flacco from Audubon, South Jersey. But I just think the Bears are kind of walking into a bad spot here. And I think the Browns are saying to themselves, you know what, we might have an outside shot here to get better seeding, maybe win the AFC North, even though we know the Ravens are somewhat in control. But I love the Browns in this spot, laying 3.
And we know that the Bears are scrappy at this point in their season. Matt Eberflus, their head coach,
Yep.
is on a very hot seat. And they're very close, as you're alluding to securing that number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft because they have Carolina's pick, and Carolina's 1-12. So if Carolina keeps losing, they will have the number 1 pick. And I do expect them to kind of tear everything down for this team and then start from the beginning, particularly at the quarterback position, as you're alluding to. But Justin Fields is playing very well for them coming down the stretch. He's upping his value. He's running the football with effectiveness, and he's not turning it over in terms of his passing. So they're going to go in there and give the Browns a fight. But as you said, Q, there's something about this Browns team that's very exciting. They're 3-1 against teams that lead their division when they play them. So they have some
Yeah.
quality wins on their current schedule. And Flacco, 3 touchdowns last week against Jacksonville. He showed you he's still got something left in the tank, the fire in the basement. So we'll see what he's got. Yeah, he's got that new contract, as you said, but I think Myles Garrett, who has 13 sacks, is going to get some pressure on field to make some mistakes. And I do pick the Browns to win this one. It may be a black and blue special, but they'll win this game.
Well, 4.5 in potential incentives. That'll give you a little bit of juice. Well, not right. Guy's made over 200 million in his career. You got the Texans and the Titans. Again, Stroud is banged up. Bucks and the Packers. I'm looking at this Jets game, and it's a large line right now. Miami's laying 9.5, close to 10. Everyone's thinking revenge factor. The Jets losing that game on Black Friday, the failed Hail Mary that was returned 99 yards. But just like the Lions, something's going on with the Dolphins. And I think you also have to really start to look at all these injuries that are starting to mount up and pile up. And they're coming off a bad loss where they should have beat the Tennessee Titans at home, mind you, up 14 with under 3 to go. Tua's turning the ball over. Hill's banged up. Waddle's banged up. The line's banged up. Linebackers are banged up. The defense, like at this moment of time, there's so many injuries with the Miami Dolphins where you start to look at this team and they're really leaking a substantial amount of water, no pun intended. And then you got the Jets, and everyone's riding high off for Zach Wilson. If Wilson goes out and sucks up the joint, then we're going to come around and we're going to be like, see, this is what you get. But they're buying into the nonsense. I don't think the Jets win, but I think they cover this game.
Well, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can cover that number. And then you talk about the key person there, Zach Wilson. Obviously, last week 3 touchdowns. He had the "I told you so" moment, and I could still play in a sleep, but I think the Jets are going to move on from him. And when you talk about the Dolphins, they have the #1 offense in the National Football League. The key is going to be, can they get Tyreek Hill going? I know he's a little banged up, but when he's over 100 yards, they're 8-0 in this season. So they're going to try to get the football to him. Obviously, Sauce Gardner will probably try to shadow him, and the Jets defense will have something to say. But I expect Wilson to make some mistakes and for Tua to capitalize on it, and then the Dolphins kind of get right against the Jets here.
What about those injuries? They lose their linebacker Phillips, Achilles tendon tear. Holland, who had the uh, first half Hail Mary interception. Baker suffered a knee injury over the win over the Commanders. Williams, their starting center, I think lost for the
Yeah,
year with an
ACL.
ACL tear. Again, Tyreek. I mean, injuries are starting to mount up, and I think defensively the Jets will keep them in this game. I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball as much as we think they are. I don't know. I think the Jets cover, but I think Miami's in a world of hurt right now, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and if they want to be a high seed, too, that we've been talking about, they got to step up here, and this is their opportunity. The Bills are still lurking for that AFC East title, so it's up to Fangio to get some pressure on Zach Wilson, and that'll help the Dolphins overall.
All right, we'll get to the rest of the slate of games in a moment, but again, a Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us. We're going around the league, week 15 already in the NFL. Got to remind you, our good relationship, our new partnership with BetterHelp. Again, holidays right around the corner. It could be so stressful for everyone. Sometimes you just need someone to just pick up the phone and talk to. Why not check out BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com, one of our proud sponsors of Back Your Play. And as I mentioned, if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. All you have to do is go to betterhelp.com/richq to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/richq. Again, they'll work around your schedule with the call and the classes, everything online, very convenient. So as we always say, take care of your mental health first and foremost. Back Your Play when it comes to that. Check out betterhelp.com. And of course, your betterhelp.com/richq to get that 10% off your first month. All right. So everyone's, so giddy and so happy and so ecstatic over the Giants. And look, like I said, man, it's nice. DeVito's played well. I still think it's absurd to suggest he's better than Daniel Jones. I think people have short memories, what Daniel Jones was able to do last year. They're looking at Jones's contract and then DeVito pretty much being undrafted. And a lot of people don't want to think this kid can play because he was undrafted. So they always go hand in hand. I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory. I go by the eye test. Giants have some juice. They won a couple games. Very outside shot at getting into playoffs at 5-8, but they've won 3 straight. I think they get a little humbled Sunday. The Saints are not a very good team. Their offense stinks, but their defense is not that bad. It's going to be a different animal in that stadium, in that crowd noise. They always fill it up to capacity. I know Carr has struggled, but now you got to deal with the noise, different cadence, different count. You're on the road, hostile environment. Saints are laying 6. I think maybe this is the week that DeVito kind of comes back down to earth a little bit. I would love for him to go out there and sling it. If anything, you're going to need a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley. They'll get Waller back. We saw what Hyatt can do. We saw the emergence of Robinson, but I just think now it's a different animal. Saints, then you got the Eagles, 2 out of the next 3, maybe coming back down to earth a little bit are the New York Giants and the Tommy DeVito story. Even if he goes out, Lloyd, and he plays poorly, I'm not going to write the kid off. I'm just going to say over the past couple of weeks, teams now get film on this kid. And again, you have to simplify the game plan. I think he's going to use his legs a lot in this game, which the Saints will be keying on, but I just think it's a tough spot on the road for the Giants.
I'm going to go the other way because when I look at Dennis Allen and the Saints, they are just so inconsistent. Even when they're winning games, they are struggling. They struggle to close out the Panthers, and they win a game, then they lose games. They won last week, so I think this is a spot where the Giants they're red hot. And they're believing in DeVito. I know he's try hard, like the kids say, he's a guy that undrafted, as you said, coming out of nowhere, but he's a backup and he's lit a fire underneath his team. Saquon's going to need to get to the end. Obviously, Cam Jordan and the guys on that defense. The Saints do have a good secondary, as you were saying. It's a tough assignment, but I just think the Giants are building something here. And don't forget about Kayvon Thibodeau. He has done a great job. He has 11 and a half
Yeah.
sacks. And if he gets pressure on a car, he could make some mistakes. And I'm not sure Taysom Hill is going to play in this game. So, as long as Kamara can be kept in check, I think the Giants can win this one.
The line has dropped to 5.5. Atlanta, Carolina, Commanders and the Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, Cowboys and the Bills. As we start to close it out, that's a big time game right now because Buffalo's at home laying 3.5 against the Cowboys, who, oh, by the way, just spanked their division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. So it kind of tells you that people still are, from a betting standpoint, maybe not 100% sold on the Cowboys. I think if this game is in Arlington, the Cowboys are at least 3.5, 4-point favorite. So you almost have a 7-point swing there. But be that as it may, could be the game of the weekend when you really think about it and break it down. I think the Bills are showing you that they've got a substantial amount of fight left in them. I think also they showed you that they rallied around their head coach. And I think there's something to be said about that because they were left for dead. I mean, let's be honest. They were 5-3, lost 2 straight. They beat the Jets. They lost a tough one to Philly, and then they bounced back and they beat Kansas City. They're 7-6, right in the playoff picture. To me, it's just a quarterback play again. Really, that's the way I look at it. Can Allen not turn the ball over? Can they play a clean football game, right? When you turn the ball over, chances are you're going to lose. You turn it over 3-4 times. Green Bay turned it over 4 against the Giants. We saw the Chargers turn over 5 last. You're going to get your ass handed to you. If they can control the tempo of this game, if they can run the football, if they can keep that Dallas offense on the sidelines, if Allen does not make mistakes, then I think the Buffalo Bills can keep this game close. But maybe I'm drinking too much of the Dallas Cowboys juice. I just think it's a different team this year with a different mindset, and they're on a mission. I actually like the Cowboys on the road in this one.
It's an interesting game because it's a proven one. As you said, you got two teams fighting for that playoff positioning, and you have Dallas who are red hot. They won 5 games in a row, scored 33 points on the Eagles in that huge blowout, and they seem to right it to ship after a tough go there for a little bit. But they're 7-0 at home, and on the road they've had some difficulty. So
Yeah.
this is a chance for Dak to step up. I know he doesn't have a lot of interceptions this year. He only has 6 interceptions, but they just seem to play different on the road, and they're going to have to be physical at the point of attack against this Bills team. You talked about Josh Allen. He's going to need to have another Herculean effort. He's going to have to protect the football, run the football, and then get Cook going and dig. So I'm going to go with the Bills in this one because there may be some elements involved in it outside. It may be cold, it may be rainy, and that's Bills type football. You saw them will themselves the victory against the Chiefs, and I think they'll find a way against the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they have a tough stretch coming here, and this is the first. They're at Buffalo, at Miami, they have Detroit, and they finish at Washington. So I still think the Eagles are going to slip in and win that division because I could see Dallas losing 1 or 2 of those games there.
Football Friday edition of BYP from our good friends over at Played Against Sports. Hey, by the way, they're doing a really nice charity event. Flight on Ice. The store is looking to have a couple bins, to have one in Newtown Square and also Egg Harbor. They love to get the word out, hockey equipment and more for any of the coaches, looking for 1 to 2 coaches to donate some items as well. Check them out. Again, you can walk in the store, 1450 Clements Road in Deptford, New Jersey. And I can't emphasize this enough right now. They'll take all that slightly used sports equipment, baseball, hockey, football, lacrosse, golf, even free weights, dumbbells, plates. They'll give you cash. through January. 30% more in-store credit if you tell me you heard it right here on BYP with Q. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Football Insider on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street South at Lloyd Vance on X. All right, so you've got, listen, to me, this is bounce back time for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? There's reports coming out, closed door, Brandon Graham, Jalen Hurts, all the veterans. Some of them are still trying to bark at former players like Seth Joyner and Darius Slay going back and forth. In sports, right? We've seen this over the years. The Eagles are a very good football team. I think they've hit a little bit of a rough patch. But we have seen over the years really good football teams. They tend to rally in these situations where there's so much, smoke and flames and noise and what's going on. You can't trust the coordinators. All of a sudden, the head coach looks like a fool. He doesn't know what's going on. The quarterbacks reverted back to, an average quarterback, even though he's an MVP type of quarterback a couple weeks ago. See, this team is a fraud. They haven't played anyone. In my experience, when you have all this shit going on, the team typically rallies, and they rally big time. And I do believe this is where you're going to see the character unveiled if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're in that locker room. But ultimately, you're going on the road in a tough spot in Seattle, and they're banged up as well, right? With the quarterback play, whether it's Geno, whether it's who I think it's Drew Lock.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, this is where the Eagles, I think this is where the Eagles come out. They shut up a lot of people, and all will be well come Monday if they just, again, figure out a way to establish the ground game early, get a balance of attack, and they got to clean up a lot of stuff on defense. But X's and O's aside, Lloyd, I think this is a game where the Eagles rebound because, in my experience, when teams are pressed and their backs are against a wall like this, the good teams, they rally and they figure out a way to get a win.
And Q, I know we've been beating up the Eagles lately, but they are a championship contender, and they were in the Super Bowl last year. This is their spot to answer the bell, as you're kind of alluding to. They have to, step up here. The Seattle team 6-7, and they're another inconsistent team, as we've been talking around the NFL. And if the Eagles are smart, they will attack that defense that has coverage lapses as well. Jamal Adams is having a lot of difficulty in coverage, and Bobby Wagner is an older linebacker in the middle. So the Eagles should be able to exploit that. Obviously, some red flags have come up this week that, somebody, unnamed source thing, and they're talking about the offense, and we know the defense has had its struggles. They're 27th.
Do you believe that, by the way? Do you believe it's a player like we saw years ago when everyone thought it was Alshon Jeffrey? But do you believe there's a little dissension going on in that locker room? Offensive players are saying that the offense is too predictable.
I think there is some dissension in the ranks there. I'm not sure if it's a player, if it's staff, or something, but obviously something's amiss. That's why they had this players only closed door meeting where they're trying to clear the air and get everything back in the right direction. They've had 2 straight losses where they've gotten beat up, and Pete Carroll's a championship level coach, so he's going to try to find ways to beat up this Eagles team. They've allowed over 130 yards rushing the last 2 weeks, so I expect a heavy dose of Walker in this game. Not sure about Geno Smith playing for the Seahawks, but the Eagles, I think this is their opportunity to get right. And Jalen Hurts is a leader. He's going to want to go out there and prove everybody wrong. So I expect the Eagles to win this one, but it may be a close game, and they have the better kicker.
I got about a minute or so before I let you get out of here. I didn't want to overstep or forget about this game because I think it's going to be a really nice game on Sunday Night Football. Baltimore 10-3 against Jacksonville 9-5. Jacksonville, again, we always like to use the phrase leaking a little bit of oil, but they're looking for a little more better offense. And really, the story is Baltimore, and everyone's looking at Lamar Jackson in the season that he's putting together. They've quietly gone about their business. They won a couple big games. They won in some dramatic fashion, getting a punt return late in a game in overtime, shoddy tackling against the Rams, but they're 10-3. They go on the road, and the line opened at 4.5. It's now sitting comfortably, I believe, at 3.5. The Ravens are favored on the road in this one. So Jacksonville gets close to 4 at home. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, Q, in this one, I definitely like the Baltimore Ravens because they're a team that they're a good all-around unit at this point in the season. Their defense is allowing less than 18 points per game, and then they have the NFL's number one rushing attack. So I think they're going to go after that Jags defense that has some holes in it. Yeah, Josh Allen has had a good season in terms of rushing the passer for them, but Lamar's playing very well at this point in the season. 16 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and then he leads all quarterbacks in rushing yards with 644. So I expect a lot of Lamar running the football, maybe some Gus Edwards and Mitchell, the young kid there. And Trevor Lawrence,
Yeah.
he's up and down. He's inconsistent. I think that this Ravens team will get after him. I think the Ravens win this one on the road and continue towards the AFC's number one seed.
There you have it. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, Broad Street South, every Monday, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Monday, 8 o'clock. And I think we may move it to Tuesday this week because you don't want to interfere with the Eagles on Monday Night Football. I know I have a lot of Eagles fans that want to do both, listen to my show and watch the game.
There you go. Look at that. You have the best of both worlds. Get the monitor going. You get to see Lloyd's mug on the other side, breaking down all the NFL stuff. And then don't forget later on next week when he joins us on a Tuesday, we'll do the game balls and the lackey and we'll recap all the action. But Eagles cap it off Monday Night Football. You got Baltimore and Jacksonville Sunday. You got the slate on Saturday that we mentioned. We broke down and highlighted some really good games on this Football Friday edition of BYP from our wonderful friends again over at Plate Again Sports, 1450 Clements Road. All right, big man, I appreciate you. Enjoy Saturday football. I like the old time. Remember back in the day, we get those NBC right around Christmas, Dick Enberg, Merlin Olsen, the Saturday games. Here we go. You get the clean
Yeah,
slate. I get the benefit of tomorrow. I'll be doing a broadcast from the house again. I'll be calling the fights remotely. So you can rest assured one eye on the football, the rest on the fights.
always NFL time, baby.
Hey, always, brother. So I appreciate you, man. We'll do it again next week.
All right, thanks for having me on.